Hey everybody, welcome to the Wild Arrow Outdoors podcast. My name is Steve. Pretty excited about this one. I've been thinking about this one for a long time, actually since we started doing the podcast. But on with me on this episode is Josh Grine, the ASA president. And Josh, welcome to the Wild Arrow Outdoors podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Steve. We've talked about it in Metropolis and said let's do it after the season ends, and that seems like it never going to get here, and here we are.
Yeah. So let's just lay the groundwork out for maybe anybody that's not familiar with ASA. Give us just a brief rundown of what the ASA Association is and how you got involved with it.
Yeah, the ASA it is a has a national tour, so we do 6 national shoots that start in February and run through August, and they're pro-ams, so we have everybody from 8 years old to I think our oldest competitor this year was 88 or 89 that I know of. Who knows what was actually out there? And then we also have our state federations, which we have state clubs in 42 states. Scott's going to yell at me for not knowing the exact number. He's our federation director, but I want to say we had 35 or 36 states that held state championships last year. So that is ASA as in a snapshot. It's a 3D archery organization that, as you know, is a family as much as it is an archery organization.
Yeah, I love it. I love going to the tournaments. That's literally my most favorite thing to do throughout the year. I'm already having withdrawals since we haven't had one in a month now.
Right.
Yeah, it's the family reunion that you want to go to, and then an archery tournament breaks out while you're there. So
Yeah.
I absolutely love going to them. I just kicked myself in the butt because I didn't start this at a much younger age. I was 55 years old if I ever shot at a 3D target in my life. So I got a late start at it, but I am so thankful and blessed that I became a part of it. I really like
Yeah.
what
I
the
wish
association is and the people, and it's just great. I love it.
I'm in the same boat as you. I got involved because my daughter wanted to shoot 3D. We heard about it and drove to one. I was like, man, in some ways, my parents are like, we're glad you didn't know about that as a teenager. But man, I'd have loved to have done something like this.
Yeah. So you're the ASA president. How long have you been in that position now?
Um, January 17th of 2021. So we're coming up on our 4th year.
And then you was right in the middle of all the COVID crap when you took over, so that was fun.
Yeah, yeah. We actually the 2021 we ran a regular season. So 2021 we were able to pull off all of our shoots. 2020, I believe. I think they still ended up having 5, maybe 6. Maybe they didn't have. I can't remember. It's been too long. I
Yeah,
tried to. That's a memory that I don't want to. I don't
exactly.
want to have in there. But yeah, yeah. We came in 2021. We ran a regular schedule, and pretty much unaffected. Now I was working with the media company. I started with them in 2019 and went right into COVID year with that. So it was started there December 1st, and then the following March, everything went haywire, and it was like, are we going to have competitions to cover?
Yes. So what's the hierarchy with the ASA association? Is it just you? Do you have a board of directors? What's the layout look like there?
No, it's Mike Tyrell's still involved. So he owned ASA for 27 years prior to me buying in. So he's still a partner. He's weighing his retirement options now, and still he loves it. Um, what he does and getting to see everybody. So Mike and I are the head of the company, and then we only have 3 other full time workers that are in the office regularly. And that being Scott Parrott, our federation director, Jenny Tendick, who most people would know from either calling the office or coming to the registration trailer, and then Ken White, who does all of our sponsorship and helps with the vendor village. And once the tournaments kick off, he kind of jumps in as an operations guy and takes care of some of the smaller details for us. And then underneath that, we've got our state directors. We've got 5 regional directors inside of the federation that help make decisions and are kind of an advisory staff for our federation.
Cool. I've always wondered about that, so I got a chance to ask you, so we're going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I talked to you, I guess it was Metropolis about doing this. We agreed to wait till the season was over. So Give me a little bit of a recap of how you felt the 2024 season actually went. What's the good, the bad, the ugly that went on?
Yeah, I think overall 2024 was a good season. We as a staff, transitional periods are, I don't want to say a challenge, because there is, of course, some hardship involved in that, but mostly it's just understanding. I wanted to be super careful when I got involved with ASA. I got involved for the reason I loved the product that was already there. Do I have plans and aspirations and some changes I want to see? Absolutely. But as far as what ASA was, it was a very solid foundation to build on. So I wanted to make sure, everybody has a love hate relationship with change. Some people love it, some people hate it. So some people are scared to death of the change, and then I have other people that are screaming at me like, "Why haven't you done this yet?" And the answer to that really is I want to make sure that I know what I'm doing. That I understand the inner workings, because it's easy to sit outside and I come in with a bunch of stuff, and some of the stuff I wanted to change now I'm like, yeah, I understand why they do things the way they do it now because I understand the inner workings. So all that to say, I think this year was I think we made a lot of progress this year internally as a company in that transitional period and kind of figuring out how everything moves forward. So that's from the inner workings. I think from the federation, the pro-ams, we had a really good year. We were up about 5% across the board at the pro-ams. Some of the states just blew up and killed it during qualifiers and state championships. Super excited to see. We had 5 new state directors this year, and they come in with ideas and some innovative stuff, and really excited the traction we're gaining there, and kind of, hey, this is what's possible. Because I think one of our biggest, the pro-ams are pro-ams and they're awesome. But I think one of the biggest things that we have to offer is what we can do for the local clubs inside of the state, and providing opportunities for anyone, no matter where you're at in the country, to experience ASA at some level, whether that's at a state qualifier, state championship, or a pro-am. And so that growth was very exciting and probably the highlight of the 2024 season for me.
So you said you're up about 5%. So what's your numbers look like on a season? I'm sure some people may attend one competition or two competitions, but across the board,
Yeah.
you have any idea how many participants you get in a season?
Yeah, this year we had. I should have pulled that number up for you.
I
I'm going
didn't
to
warn
say
you ahead of
eight
time.
thousand.
About
Right,
8,000.
we're going to say unique shooters, and
Wow.
that's at the pro am level.
Okay.
If we break that down to states, that number grows a little bit. I don't want to throw out um, numbers because, like I said, I should have come
Yeah.
prepared, but
Well,
we've had kind of a crazy
I
week, and I didn't pull all the numbers up, but
I didn't give you a heads up of
that
what I was going to ask you, so it's okay.
yeah. So the way that for the kind of go back to the question, what is ASA? For those that don't understand the ASA, Delta McKenzie Pro Am Tour. Um, that is a series of 6 shoots. That is a tour. So we've got shooters that really vie for the shooter of the year positions, and so they're going to attend 4 to 6 of those events to try to obtain that shooter of the year title. But then we've got other people with maybe London, Kentucky is not in Alabama. There's the joke, the Alabama Shooters Association. So you get the London, Kentucky's, the Metropolis. You get kind of a whole new different demographic. So you get your core that shows up for that, but then London is a great example. It draws a lot from the Northeast, and so we'll see unique shooters at that as well.
What is the biggest event of the year? I assume it's going to be Foley as far as the number of
Foley.
participants you get.
Yeah, Foley is usually, this past year we were just over 2,100 shooters at Foley, and that's the third year now. I think second year we've broken 2,000, so that is the biggest. Um, I think a lot of things go into that. It's February, everybody's itching to get back. It's also February in most of the country. It's miserable weather, and you get to go to Foley and enjoy mid 70s and the beach and everything that a beach town has to offer. And so I think there's just a lot that goes into Foley, and the people there. The venue itself is outstanding. It is one of our premier locations for sure. So yeah, Foley always gets the most. And then London and Fort Benning or Fort Moore now would be right behind that. We're typically pushing around 1900 in London the last few years. So that's turned into a really great location. As much as people complain about the power line, a lot of people love to come and shoot it.
You have to see it to believe it.
That's right.
Just
That's
saying it's a
right.
power line doesn't mean anything. You got to see the tunnels and what it looks like. We do have in one of our previous podcasts. We talked about that uh, that range of what it looks like. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. It's definitely
It,
challenging.
it's the thing about London, and everybody's always like, when are you going to move from London? The thing about London, a lot of people do like its location, and there are several competitors. I mean, I think don't quote me on this, but this is it. In the last 10 years, I think Levi's only missed the podium one time in
Yeah.
London, and he's won a majority of those. Nathan Brooks is a guy. He didn't shoot hardly any pro-ams this year. In fact, London might have been the only one, and he made a heck of a run, made the shoot down. Um, at his one event of the year at what people would arguably say is the most difficult. And he's just figured some tricks out to shooting at London. So there is an element of diversity that I do enjoy at London. We've got lighting that is always an issue. It's one of the few venues that we have that offers a little bit of elevation. And I say a little bit because for the Southern ASA
Right.
shooter, they're always talking about cuts, this and that. Then you get the people coming from New England or the Western states that shoot a lot of elevated 3D. They're like, this isn't elevation.
No, it's flat.
I'm not even thinking about a cut on this, right? And so I like London for that. It offers diversity. But yeah, London and Fort Moore are typically not far behind Foley in attendance.
I love again. We can get into this part a little bit about how many ranges are set up. And you're talking about a specific range, but what is there, 14, 15, 16 ranges? I might be way off when I
There's
say that, but
17 competitive ranges out there.
yeah.
So and now that includes the practice ranges and the elite known distance ranges. But 17 full 20 target competition ranges are set up.
Wow. So that's a lot of targets that have to get set for each competition.
It is a lot of targets. We've put pictures out. They show up the way the targets work for ASA. They show up on Monday morning before the event. We've got about 5 or 6 of our core guys there, plus whoever's helping from the local community. We unload the tractor and trailers. All the targets are in there, boxed up, palletized. We unload them, stage them, and spend most of Monday taking those targets out. So all in all, we go between 440 and 470 targets, depending on the shoot and how many practice bags we bring in.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah,
That's
a
a
lot
whole
of
lot.
moving.
So yeah, you was talking about pictures and everything get posted. I wanted to put that up too with the competition archery media staff, PJ Riley and his staff. Man, what a phenomenal job those guys are doing.
Yeah, yeah, we have a lot of fun throughout the year, and PJ, when I'm in the office for competition archery media, his desk's not real far from mine, and we have a ton of fun. And they're doing a great job. PJ loves it. Kyle, the videographer, has really grown in understanding archery and how to tell the story. And so it's a team that I'm so thankful that I get to work with and love what they do and their dedication to growing our sport.
You never see them sitting around being bored and letting the dust collect. Every time you see them in the range, man, they are
No,
on the go. And if they are
yeah,
stopped, it's long enough to talk about. Well, you go this way, I'm gonna go that way, and
right. The story I always tell and joke around with people is PJ. I got so tired of we'd walk through a range, and PJ is the nicest. What you see on camera is the same thing that I mean. You meet PJ, he's the same person all the time, which is fantastic. The problem with that is everybody wants to talk to PJ. So when you're at a place like Coleman, where you might have to walk through 4 or 5 ranges in between
um,
pro ranges, it would take us so long that finally I just started walking around or telling Kyle to walk with the camera. PJ, you hold this mic so that everybody thinks we're live and we can actually make it from point A to point B in a respectful time. Because he is, I've joked with his wife when they go out to dinner. I said, because she said they'll go out to dinner and she can see it. She can see it in somebody's eyes. They recognize PJ. She's like, that person's going to come over and talk to you. and he doesn't care. He loves that. But I've joked with her. I said, "Does it ever bother you that so many middle-aged men are infatuated with your husband?" She just laughs. I never thought about it that
Oh,
way.
that's great. Oh. Do you see archery growing? Or more specifically, do you see 3D archery at ASA growing?
For sure. The potential is there. I'm a big stats guy. And so one of the conversations I have a lot, I alluded earlier to some changes that I think probably need to happen. Archery as a whole has been relatively flat for as far as I can go back. Um, I've heard stories of the good old days when thousands of people used to shoot ASAs. It was way fewer ranges, so there weren't thousands of people there. But we kind of had, and you see it in target archery. I would say there's two exceptions for tournaments out there that are continuing to grow, but I think across the board we're relatively flat, down in some areas. And I think there is definitely potential to grow. ASA is going to continue to grow. I mean, as I said, the federation I want to be a huge focus, because that not only grows the people involved in 3D archery, but it also supports the local clubs. Which in our area, there's a lot of local clubs, but I can go to them and they might put on a shoot and there are 5 or 6 people there. So I look at the sustainability of that club, which is still a business. At the end of the day, they got to pay the bills. They've at bare minimum, they've got to pay their taxes and insurance. And you're like, if it continues this way, how long is that going to last? And you hear stories all the time of clubs closing all over the place. So um, we want to do all that we can to support the local club, and growing our federation does that. It makes insurance affordable for the clubs, as well as partnering with a national brand. We've heard success stories this year, people that, states that maybe had 3 or 4 shoots in previous years. And, one state in particular, they added three shoots this year. They got some local businesses to help sponsor and put some money behind it.
Right.
And I think the attendance at the last shoot was 173 people for a brand new shoot,
Awesome.
which opened the eyes to a lot of clubs that are putting on 3D shoots, fun 3D shoots, or even small competitive 3D shoots in the Northeast, and they're getting 10 or 15 people, and they see a club that the first time that they hold a shoot like this get 173 people turn up, and there was a lot of excitement about that. So yeah, I do think that 3D will continue to grow. Excited about the partnerships that ASA is making, working with Delta McKenzie, and they've got a passion to make sure that local clubs can do this and want to work with local clubs and targets as well as partner with ASA. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. I do think we will continue to grow.
So as ASA grows, and then I'm sure you hear the question a million times a year about what about this spot? What about that spot?
Yeah,
Talk a little bit about what goes into it's not just a geographical, like, oh, let's go to Little Rock, Arkansas, or let's go to
right.
talk about what are the accommodations and everything that you have to make something work. And not even really
Steve,
getting
it's a
into the
nightmare.
relationship with the city, but the amount of
Right.
acreage, the amount of
Yeah.
hotel rooms, the amount of restaurants,
Right.
things of that nature.
It's hard to. So it's the area, I've said this a few times. It's the area that I was most naive about. Of course, I want to expand it, our geographical location, and I thought it's easy. I had all these spots, and how hard can it be? Um, the thing that you said we don't have to bring up, but we will need to touch on, is the community and,
Yep.
and the support of the city, because that's paramount. But before we can even get to that point, it's, is there a viable location? And some of the things that take into consideration there: 500 acres minimum, and that's if it's the perfect 500 acres. Because at our current capacity, I said we had 17 competitive ranges. We need to do better than that. We need to have more practice facilities available. We need to have more ranges available. And so 500 acres fits our current format. But if we want to grow and we look at long term partnerships with these venues, because there's a ton of work on the front end, you don't want to do it for a year or two. That's not beneficial to anybody. So we're looking at a bare minimum 500 acres that needs to be primarily wooded. Um, in that, you need about 30 acres for parking and vendor village. With the vendor village, you need 20, 30 to 50 amp trailer outlets. And that's just a facility. You need the availability to put in roads. If people familiar with ASA, it was designed long ago for media coverage. So the way the ranges are laid out, I've heard for as long as I've been part of ASA, I hear the story. It's kind of like a spine with the rib cage going off, right? And that you have a central location or central access so that people can get back and forth between ranges. And that was designed early on for media. So you have to have a road that you can drive and deliver targets to so that we can get them out in a day or two. So you have to, if you're in a park or something, but you don't have the ability to make any amendments, that's not going to work. And then once you've got 500 workable acres plus parking in the vendor area, we say we want 4,000 hotel beds within a 20-minute drive. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they're like, don't ever go back to Augusta. And I kind of pressed them on that. I was like, but people loved Augusta. Like I heard a lot of great stories about Augusta and the way it's shot. And they said, the facility was fantastic. But we had to stay 40 minutes away. And so nobody wants to drive 40 minutes in the morning and 40 minutes at the end of the night. So we want 4,000 hotel beds within a 20-mile radius. Then you have to have the restaurant infrastructure to support, 4,000 people. Because in Foley, we got 2,100 shooters this past year. But that's not taking into consideration siblings, moms, dads, grandparents, coaches, sponsors, people that are working for sponsors. So you've got to have those hotel beds. And so, I can find 500 acres, no problem. Let me say this, with that 500 acres, as soon as you introduce some elevation, so as soon as I take my draw from here to here, that 500 acres because of safety increases, which is another one of the reasons that historically ASA has been try to have relatively flat ranges to keep that footprint as small as possible. So, that's those are the bare minimums. Then you need things like, for the shoot down, you've got to have a shoot down facility that you got a 50 amp outlet for the broadcast trailer. You have to have some kind of high speed internet available or the willingness to bring in a satellite truck. Two of our venues currently, Competition Archery Media uses a satellite truck to get the live stream out. And that's just scratching the surface. And then you have to find a community that is willing to host up to 4,000 people coming into their towns. And that works best when you've got a sports commission or a tourism department that sees the value in what we'll do to the local economy coming in for a week. And they want to help you make it the best event possible. And our current partnerships, you see it at some of the sites. Some sites, people have no idea how much work the local community is actually putting in, but they are a huge reason that we can do what we do. Without that community support, we wouldn't be able to hold the pro-ams the way we do.
And we saw that in Coleman, Alabama a year ago when a storm hit.
Absolutely. Yep. If the city of Coleman hadn't stepped in, that our classic would have been canceled with everybody there. And, within an hour on Friday afternoon, we had all the powers to be in the city in there. Within an hour and a half, they had made the decision, like, we're going to park at the local high school. It's not ideal. It's 3 miles away, but we're going to provide local transportation, buses, our public transportation system and school buses, and get the shooters from the high school to the event site. And without them, because in Coleman, you park on grass and fields. And we had, 5 inches of rain in 3 hours. I mean, it was incredible. We had trees down over the range. I mean, they had people out there with us helping with chainsaws, cutting stuff up, and so that we could get our event off. And, other than a few small hiccups or we'll call them inconveniences, we still had a great classic last year. And so then when you take that into consideration, all that's involved, all that you're requiring of the community, we are looking at sites. We're looking at a site that will get us further north. I'll leave it at that.
You can't spill the beans yet?
Won't put it out there yet. But we're looking at a site that would move the tour further north. The conversations are going great. We actually had their director of tourism who was at the Classic and drove around and looked at all we did and took everything into advisement, take back to meetings that he's going to have. And he said, "Oh man, we're excited." I said, "How long do you think?" And he said, "With what we would need to do to prepare the park and that kind of stuff, we're probably looking at a 2-year window."
So, are you looking
And
to replace or add to the tournament schedule?
sorry, I have a tickle in my throat.
Oh, that's all right.
We're not sure yet. We're not sure yet. You know, I say we're not sure. We're not sure if we're going to replace. We always want to have stuff in our pocket because things are relational. There are some venues where it's, we've been for a long time that we're just not sure what the future looks like there. And because it takes so long to find venues, we've got to have them ready to go. But there are one or two. I won't spill the beans yet on that either. That probably in the next few years will be replaced, just out of necessity because we've had leadership changes in the community. Leadership changes. Military post. A military post is a perfect example. You have leadership
Right.
change like every 2 years, and you've got a post commander that loves having you there. We're in great shape so far, but I'm just using this is a hypothetical example. But you get the next post commander comes in and doesn't have any interest. Yeah, doesn't have any interest in having you there. You know, contract or not, federal property, you could be on the street. So we're always looking, and I tell people, I'm always looking. The team's always looking. Send us information. Just to set the record straight, there is no application. There's been some rumors going around that people submitted applications and never heard anything back. Um, we don't have an application, so I'm not sure not sure what applications they filled out or submitted. But the way it works for us is if somebody provides us a site, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to Google Earth it. And with Google Earth, you can draw the ranges in there, you can put the parking lots and the spacing and everything you need in there. We can tell a lot from Google Earth. And so if we see in Google Earth that there's potential, then we start to try to find somebody in the local community to work with. And one of the other things that is, I think, a key piece of information for people when trying to understand this finding host sites, public property is the best property that we can work with. The reason being, we partner so closely with the local city that they're spending resources, giving us people. Any improvements they do on a public property, whether it's state owned, locally owned, county owned, they receive value from that. We cut in roads, now all of a sudden they have trails. Where if you're on a piece of private, it's harder to get the local community to buy into
Mhm.
to helping you get the work done that you need. So that's it in a nutshell.
So, rumor has it again, what goes on at this level and my level is two different things. Rumor
Yeah.
has it that all the pros are going to 60 yards next year. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
Known pros are going to 60 yards next
Known
year.
only known
That's the
pro.
only known pro is going to 60
Okay.
yards.
Is
There
that going?
was
Yeah, go ahead. I just got a follow
no.
up
You
question.
ask
Go
your
ahead.
question.
No, is
Um,
that going to have any
when
impact with the current facilities? We're extending the ranges out longer.
It is not.
Okay.
That was something so that came up. I'll answer that question, then I'll go back and address some of the rumor. So one of the first things that was brought to me was the ranges need to be longer. They need to be longer. They need to be longer. Scott and I looked at it. We talked about it. He asked last year because I was ready to make the change in 2023, and Scott asked if we could go one more year so that while he's actually setting ranges, he could measure and make sure that in shooting out, because there's so much involved. It's not just
Right.
moving a target another 10 yards back. Like Metropolis, for example, as that's opened up, that becomes wildly problematic
Yep.
because you've got the levee and then you've got the trail in the woods, and the last thing we want is safety concerns. So he measured everything, measured the shoot down to make sure that we could get to 60 yards. Looked, you go to 60 yards, you've got to have at least a 55 and a 60-yard bag on the practice bags. You'd like to have one or two, at least 3D targets over the 50-yard mark. And so he took the year to really evaluate all that and make sure we weren't going to put ourselves in a bind. We can do it with very minimal changes to range setup and design and style, practice areas, a whole 9 yards. So that addresses the facilities. Early on there was discussion brought up by our competition committee. That's one thing I failed to say when you ask about how the hierarchy. We do have a competition committee that I sit down, myself, Scott, and Jenny sit down with at the end of every season, and we read through the rules. And the competition committee is made up of 5 shooters, and they weigh in on things that we've seen, things that we heard, decisions that are being made. And so when we talked about going to 60 yards for known pro, it popped up that seniors and women as well. So it's like, well, let's hold off on that and have further discussions, because we don't have to make any decisions till the tour guide goes out. And talk to a lot of the women. I think the women were largely indifferent. Because we're only doing known. Unknown, it was this. I won't use the exact word because this is a family-friendly podcast, but there was an explosive, and then no, right? Unknown is not going to 60 yards. And the women, and so on the women on the known side, a lot of them come from a target world where they're shooting.
Right.
If they shoot outdoor target, that's 50 meters, to 55
right.
yards. A lot of them do redding. They do field shoots. Going to 60 yards for most of those women, not going to be a problem. The seniors were split. The seniors I talked to, some of them loved it, some of them not so much. And I think one of the concerns, and a very valid concern, we start at 7:30 in the morning. What happens if we step up and there's a 58 or 59 yard dark target? We're never going to be able to see it anymore. And then that gets into discussion, which we can get to if you want, with what time the pros start in the mornings.
I have that on my list.
So taking everything that we heard into consideration, we decided this year we're just going to do it for known pro, and leave the seniors and women. Like I said, we could have probably done it for the women, not a problem, but they share a range. So that would have created some issues with that. So the known pro, and do I think it's going to change scores? Not really. What the heart of it is to really increase the average of the targets for the known pros, which is what a lot of them, as I talked to, that's what they wanted to see. They wanted to see an increased average. So instead of a 40 to 41 yard average, get us 47 to 48. Because most of those guys shooting in that class, you have a target under 40 yards. The only person that's going to miss a 12 maybe is that fourth guy, and it's just because he can't fit his 27 diameter arrow in there. But what it does is it'll add some gamemanship. It's spreading that max yardage out, bringing that average up, and then it'll also make them make some decisions.
Yep.
Do I want to try to shoot a 27 diameter arrow at 60 yards, or do I want to drop back to 25, 23, start to look at that? So do I think it'll change scores? Not really, but I think it will add some gamemanship that known pro specifically has been missing, where it's just, you want to compete with the Jimmy Lutz and Kyle Douglases of the world, you got to aim at every 12. That is the game.
That's the game.
And this will change that a little bit. It's not going to be dramatic. I don't think this is going to all of a sudden flip the leaderboard, change the scores drastically, but it'll make it a little more of a game.
I think your top dogs are still going to be your top dogs, but it's going to be. I appreciate good archery, and watching those guys smash 12s at 50 yards is a blast now, and it's going to be just that much better watching them smash them at 60 yards. But I'd heard, again, what goes on in the real world and what we hear, and that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation. I heard that all pro classes were going to 60 next year, and I thought, oh my God, I couldn't imagine being out there judging targets, and is that 54 or is that 57? Like, geez Louise.
No, it was the only thing that was in discussion early on was all known going to 60. But we're kind of talked with some of the people in the class, and after lots of conversation, we're going to keep that just to the known pro for next year.
So do you have any other changes going on for the 25 season that we can talk about?
Nothing major. We will, on the pro side of things, we will have, since we brought up the start time, you said you had a question.
Oh, yeah.
We will get all of the pros starting at 9:00 again on Friday, and everybody starting at 7:30 on Saturday. The reason for that, everybody went to 8 for 1, because there was a lot of question, a lot of concern about some of the ranges that are used for multiple classes. So open pro, semi-pro, women's pro, the unknown classes. Known class, largely irrelevant. But there was a big request for targets being moved and husbands and wives, roommates, whatever, not shooting the same ranges. Um, and enough of those conversations had happened. Like, okay, we've got to do something. And so the only thing that we could do this year, now we have changed some of the ranges, so it'll be vastly better for next year. But in the middle of the season this year, it's like, okay, we can move targets, but we have to do it before the next groups go out, because a couple of the groups utilizing the ranges had us the Friday option, but also could shoot Sunday. Well, once that first group shoots on Friday, if anybody is left shooting on Sunday, that range can't change. So we had to get them moved between. Once everybody's shooting, I've got my range officials are all spread out all over the place. We've got a little help, so we moved it forward so that we could get those targets moved. After we did it, we realized since we're only doing 2 ranges, we could get by, so we moved the known classes back to 9 and left open pro at 8 o'clock. This year, we've realized we've made some adjustments. Now, seeing how everything works, that we can move the targets at the end of the day on Friday. So we're going to put everybody back at 9, and that'll help husbands and wives.
Yep.
Jeff and Scott Hopkins, the people that ride together.
Sure.
They're starting at the same time. And the reason the pros shoot early, that's always something that's asked. So let's put it out on your podcast. That is actually some of them think they're getting punished. We have to shoot first thing. Like that's not fair. Honestly, especially Saturday, that is to allow us the biggest window of opportunity for you to get all your arrows in if something happens. If we get a rainstorm or thunder and lightning and we have to delay, if you start first thing in the morning, we've got up until that shoot off starts at 4 o'clock, we have that whole window. We start you at 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock and you have to be done by 4 for the shoot down, our window's gone. You're not getting your arrows in. And so that is why the pros start first and they start early, is to give us the biggest window of opportunity to make sure they get all their arrows in.
That's a good answer.
Usually most of the time when I explain that to people, like, okay, I still don't like getting up early, but it makes sense. So
Yeah, I shoot the amateur class. I'm not a pro. Kicking it around maybe next year, but yeah, everybody has that conversation. Everybody's talking
right,
archery, and why do they make the pros go so early? There's plenty of time. They can go out there 11 o'clock and there's still plenty of time. Well, nobody ever
yeah,
took that into consideration that, yeah, as long as the weather's nice.
right, yeah. If the weather's good, sure, we could do that. But and then you've got all the classes that you have to fit in as well. So that's why I said when we were talking about acreage and 500, we need more competitive ranges. That we would have a little more flexibility with timing. Practice is another area that, especially if you go to Foley, that just turns into a circus at the practice range on Foley because everybody's there, and we know we need more practice space. So you've got to taking all that into consideration, the amount of moving people, the amount of property you need. Some of those things, yeah, when you're sitting there, just you don't think about it, but they have to be thought about in the decisions that we make.
So the way ASA is set up currently, do you feel that categories are set up good? Or are some of the categories too watered down, or do we need to add more? What do you think? Oh, you cut out. I didn't hear you. I lost you. Can't hear you. Hopefully, we're still getting a recording here, but there you go. Now you're back.
I'm back.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, I don't know what happened there. See,
Yeah,
I
that's all
think it's
right.
a sign that they don't want me to talk about all the classes we have.
There are a lot of them. How many? Do you know what the number is? Of how many different categories there are? I mean, there's definitely something for everybody.
56.
56. Okay.
And that's counting, junior eagles. Where you have the majority of the classes. I think overall our adult classes are good. We do have a lot, but especially at the pro-am level, I think most of those are important because we have such a diverse shooting audience, and I want everybody to be able to participate in a pro-am. I mean, we had 2 guys at Fort Benning. I don't remember if it was this year or last year. They had set up a bow and shot for the first time that week. And they were so excited to be there. I mean, they literally, neither one of those guys had shot 20 arrows through a bow prior to coming there. And so, having your novice
Hmm.
classes, I think, is super important with the progression for people to work their way up to pros. Where you get into a lot of the numbers are youth classes and senior classes, which I think are also important, because there's a big difference between an 8-year old and a 12-year-old. There's a big difference between a 50-year-old and a 55-year-old. I have people, and it's hard. You're never going to please everybody with this, because there are people that complain about too many classes, but then I have people coming up and they're like, could you put a middle class in your seniors? Because we hit 40 years old. We're not old enough to go into the senior class yet, but our eyes aren't good enough to keep up with the 18-year-olds that are playing this game now. And so it's a fine balance. I think what we have right now, is sufficient. We cover those classes. I think there are discussions that over the next few years you have, um, but I think overall, with the pro am and the heart behind them and providing a place that everybody can come and compete and have fun, I think we're in a good place.
So here's an oddball question for you. Uh, Again, people at my level make the discussion. 3D archery was set up to simulate a hunting situation. Why is there not a pins class that's professional?
Um, there could be at some point. There wasn't when I took over. One of the fine balances. So you're opening the door. I'm gonna take
Oh,
this
sure.
opportunity to walk through it. One of the problems with selling archery to the outside industry is they don't understand our classes already. Um, you know, there's a pro class for women, pro class for men, pro class for senior. That's pretty standard. But then you throw in there, you've got the unknown game, the known game. I'm telling them we've got 6 classes, and they're like, well, and this is how sports work. People hate on me for this. It came up last year when PJ and I had a discussion about which classes were going to make it on TV. From the outside world, looking at any sport that you watch, you want to see the best of the best. You want to see the premiere. When you don't have an understanding of archery, and I come to you and say, we've got 6 pro classes now, say we add a pins pro class for men and women, I've got 8 pro classes. They they don't wrap their brain around that. That's like, so who are the best of the best? Because that's what we want to spend our dollars on promoting. Well, all of them at their independent style, discipline, bow type, whatever. Um, and that's just talking 3D archery. When you look at archery as a whole, then you introduce
Right.
recurve, Olympic recurve, barebow, traditional. It's like there's not another sport that really
Crossbow.
has anything close, right? And so looking at it, and that's a conversation for down the road. Like, what are the pros? How does somebody become a professional? Because again, archery is one of the few sports. I mean, heck, everybody says, well, if cornhole can do it, why can't archery? Well, cornhole does some things that the archery community doesn't want to do. Number one, you've got to qualify if you want to play in a pro event in cornhole. You play so many local tournaments. You go to your regional tour or your state tournament, your regional tournament. You get an invitation to the national tournament, and so many pro cards are handed out at the national tournament for next year's tour. Most sports run that way, and so that is a fine line of what early on that I'm trying to figure out what is needed in the pro classes. Where does it water us down as we try to grow? But let's be honest, it started as something to practice for hunting. That's not what it is anymore. It's There are people that absolutely use it for that. That's why I shoot 3D. So I'm not knocking the people that are primarily in 3D. But when we look at the pro classes, they're coming to compete. In the pins classes, I weigh that looking at the participation in it. Am I saying we'll never have a pro class? No, but it's just something that's always in discussion, especially if we want to try to move this thing mainstream. And some feelings, there's going to be some disagreement around that for sure. I have those conversations all year long. Well, we need to be mainstream. Archery needs to be mainstream. All right, well, we got to make some changes. No, we don't. Every sport out there
Yep.
has made changes to be on TV. Look at what baseball did this year. Whether right or wrong, they made changes to make it more exciting to
Yep.
watch. and better for TV. Um, and so I think some of those conversations have to be had, and is in adding pro classes as part of that conversation.
Where do you see ASA being 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road?
I want to give you my non. I won't give you my let's take over the world conversation,
Go
but
ahead. Think big.
um, I do want to see 3D archery first in the states continue to grow at the state level. My overarching goal for 5 years, looking at the federation, is everybody in this country within 3 hours of their home can drive to an ASA. Now that might be a state qualifier, state championship, but can drive to an ASA. One of my challenges with Scott on that is we need to bring some continuity, repeatability to our state federations, so that no matter, if you're in Spokane, Washington, or Bangor, Maine, and you drive to a state ASA shoot, that you're getting a feeling for what ASA is and what it's about. And so bringing some consistency across the states, inside the states, having people to be able to drive within a few hours, attend an ASA shoot, as well as expanding the geographic region of our ASA pro-ams. That's at a local level. The other thing we're working on with Delta McKenzie and some people in Europe are establishing a European tour. And so this fall, I'm trying to make a trip over there for some work for some clubs and organizations that are already holding ASA style shoots. Canada's holding ASA style shoots. There are clubs in the UK, Sweden, South Africa, Australia, Hawaii that are running ASA style shoots or mini tours. I mean, then we've got a few mini tours out there. And so getting over to Europe to some of those clubs to expand our wings, grow our brand, bring awareness. We talked sponsorship very briefly a little bit ago, having to say that we're actually a worldwide audience and not just viewed as a Southeastern tour. That we've got members in the European nations, we've got members in Africa, we've got members in Asia, and then the exciting thing for that long term is that you have an actual 3D World Championship where the best shooters in the world come and compete. I think that looks like you maybe have each continent that has its own tour, and then you take your classic winners and you bring them to one location and have a world championship. There's lots of world championships in archery out there. Not all of them would I classify as world champion. You bring in the best of the best. That's what I want to know. And I think just bringing that together would be super exciting. And having that ASA family being a global family. And I'll tell you the conversations I'm having, and we had quite a few international shooters come over this year and experience it, and they're super excited. The classic, we had several guys from South Africa, 2 from Australia, Denmark, Sweden, Austria, England, Canada, and Mexico. And those shooters are very excited about the opportunity to have easier access to ASA. So that's big scale.
Yeah, when we were
And that doesn't.
when we were at London, Kentucky this year, there was a guy at my hotel I was talking to that was from London, like England.
Yeah, yeah.
He's like, I went from the
Was
big
it
London to the little London.
Tony? Were you talking to
I
Tony?
don't know what his name was. We just shot the bull for a while. He was a great guy,
Yeah.
and his first time in the United States, and came to an
Oh no,
ASA tournament.
it wasn't Tony. He's been coming for a while, so it must have been somebody different. But yeah, that's and so I've gotten some pushback. So I'll just put this out there as well. I've gotten some pushback. Well, there's so much to do in the U.S. Why would you even be thinking about that right now? And the answer to that is it's not either or. It's both and. As we focus on that, what the leverage, resources, exposure that will gain for us will make it easier to do the things that we want to accomplish here. And so, yeah, that's a little picture what we want to do. But I want to continue to grow this thing and have a global family.
So I've got one more thing I want to pick your brain on real quick. Um, I think I know what the answers are, but I hear a lot of people that are participants with ASA that want to complain about the payouts between the different categories,
Yeah,
based off registration fees versus what the payouts are. But they're all the same pretty much across the board, aren't they? As far as percentage.
100%.
Uh, So
And
tut,
I've
tut,
had,
explain this real quick for everybody
yeah,
that's watching and or listening that it's the same. The ratio is the same.
men, men, women, seniors, youth, pros, amateurs, barebow, freestyle unlimited, whatever it is that you shoot, the payout structure is exactly the same. And that is it's 70% of your registration goes into that tournament's payback. An additional 10% is held for shooter of the year and rookie of the year that goes in. So, yes, there is a difference between, a pro class that has 80 people in it paying 3 times more the registration fee than some of the amateur classes. That's why their check's bigger. But the payout is the same across the board. And I actually was challenged on that last year, and I told somebody, I'm like, all the numbers are there. You, they're on the website. Take a calculator, figure it out, and come back and tell me I'm wrong. Um, do I want paybacks to be higher? Absolutely. And I think some of that, as we talk about expanding and growing, bringing in the sponsor dollars to where people are able, a pro archer is able to make a living shooting 3D archery. But payouts for amateurs, pros, men and women, it's the exact same formula across the board.
I had a discussion at one of the events this year where somebody made the comments like, "Well, I'm glad I showed up. Like I sucked, but at least I got to put some money in the pot so the pros can make more money." And I'm like, I don't think it works that way.
No,
When an
no,
amateur
the
shows
amateur
up
money
and
stays.
yeah, you're when an amateur shows up and pays their entry fees, that does not go to a different category. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but
Nope. So if you're shooting K40, we take 70% of the registration fees there, go back to paybacks in K40. It's how we can pay out, even some of those classes that maybe don't have a lot of shooters in, they're not getting a big check, but there's something there. And, they still pay out the top positions and, depending on how many people are in the class, how far down that gets paid. But that the payouts are the same for everyone.
so if
So
somebody wants a bigger payout in their amateur category, they just need to bring more buddies along to shoot that class with them.
that's right. The more people that are in there, the bigger the payout's
That's
going to
right.
be. So
All
yeah,
right.
bring friends. Bring
Yeah.
friends that you know you can beat. Then you
Josh,
can make money.
I really appreciate you jumping on and spending time with me this evening and talking about some of this stuff. I would like to keep going for another 2 hours, but I'm not going to do that to you. But maybe we can get you back on again in the future.
Was there
Um,
anything else pressing that you wanted to ask? Because you don't. I've got some time, so if you had a whole sheet there, is there anything that we didn't cover?
no, you hit most of it. No, I guess I just want to get it. I was kind of hoping you had more info for the 25 season about something that was going to be new or different or something like that. But any new targets
No,
next year?
the new targets that will be announced officially next week. I don't want to until I have the document in hand. The reason there was a delay this year, obviously, Delta McKenzie's gone through a bunch of changes too, and they wanted to evaluate. So historically, we announced that at the Classic, um, and we were back and forth with Delta, and they wanted to do something different and talk about targets, and so we've gone back and forth, and just understanding that they're in transition too. We said that's fine. We can announce it. So we will. A decision has been made, but until I have actual documentation of an order being accepted, I don't want to throw it out there and have a change and make myself look like I didn't know what I was talking about, or Delta McKenzie not know what they were talking about. So that'll come out. It'll be on the website, the app. We'll probably do some social posts about the 2 new targets that are coming out. There will be 2. So 2 of the old ones will go away, and 2 new ones are coming in, and that'll be out. Yeah, for 2025, not a lot of changes that will be felt for the shooters. We hope to have new venue in 2026, but we are making it through that transition phase to where we can do some of the stuff that we've talked about and watch this thing grow.
Well, hopefully the new targets are something cool, like a groundhog or something like that.
A chipmunk.
Chipmunk,
Actually,
yeah.
the one that was thrown around at the classic, and I think it was a pro that started it. If I had to guess, I would say Michael Shore, but don't quote me on that. But was I think it's an Empire Penguin, and they said that way or an Emperor Penguin on day one, you could shoot it and it would be white, and then on day two you'd get back and it would be turned
Black.
around and you'd be shooting it, it'd be black.
Yes.
We've heard all kinds of fun stuff. I told the known pros that we were probably going to go to a gopher or a groundhog, and that was going to be the 60-yard target for sure.
Oh yeah, put it in the stump or something like that, where you
Yeah,
really can't see it.
right. So no, nothing that drastic that we're looking at with Delta, but we're trying to work with their process too and help them figure things out. And like I said, I can't talk enough about that partnership because they've been really good to how do we help clubs, how do we help grow this thing, and they put some money into prize pots this year and just super attentive to what we want to do to grow this thing. They're helping me figure out how to get targets overseas if we're going to have a tour over there that are still cost effective for people. And
that's
so,
gonna be an expense.
yeah. So yeah, I apologize that I can't put out anything earth shaking, but a lot of these changes take, whether it's a site change, a directional change, they just take so much time.
Yep.
And it's one of the reasons that I probably haven't done as many of these kind of things when asked, because I know everybody wants to know the big secret. And the fact of the matter is we don't have the big secret just yet. We're working on getting there.
Yeah, I'm not so much on the big secret as much as like I said, we set this podcast up just to try to help educate people. And yeah, you just talking about what goes on to into the planning of an event. Most people just don't understand that. I used to be president for the National Taxidermist Association, and we would hold our annual conventions. It was inside one big giant hotel with a convention center. I didn't have to worry about all the things you have to worry about. And yeah, I couldn't imagine, what you go through, because I know what that was like. It took a full year to plan one big event, and for you to have six big events in a year, and with all the different moving pieces. And so when you guys go to your average tournament, how many workers do you have between the people setting the targets, your range officials, things like that? How many workers do you have helping out?
That's something really good to talk about, because I think it sheds light on what's involved. And the short answer to that is it varies depending on where we're at. And so, like the first event of the year, Foley, there's a lot of work done before we get there. We've gone there for several years now. They do a lot of the lane maintenance for us. So we get there, we don't have to brush hog. We might have to weed eat a spot here or there, but they've got the lanes pretty well set up for us. And so that first event, Scott, myself, Ken, Pat, and Tommy, and sometimes Randy or Bill, depending on if we need extras. So there's anywhere between 6 or 8 of us that show up on Sunday. We meet the truck in the morning, and most of the sites we're getting an additional 6 workers. Whether it's the borough, the park, wherever we are, that they provide people for us. So that first day, we'll do anywhere between 10 and 15 people on Monday to help us unload the trucks, unbox the targets, get rid of the trash, get everything at the stakes. Tuesday, we run that same 10 to 15 people in. They walk all the targets in. They set all of the stakes, so there's shooting stakes on every one of for the people who maybe haven't been to one. Got numbers. There's 20 targets on a range. They go out and put the stakes out, walk the targets halfway in. Then Tuesday afternoon into Wednesday morning, they actually go out. Those same 10 or 15 people will go out, and somebody will stand on the stake, range it. 2 guys get down, set the target. We have 3 or 4 teams of 3 people going down the range setting those targets. And then Scott walks around and yells at everybody and tells them to move it or change it, however Scott wants to set it up. And you either hear like, oh, that's really good. I think his words are, come get you some. If you hear come get you some, it's good. The other thing you can hear is, what are you, stupid? and that means that target's going to need moved. And then Wednesday night, we'll usually have a few more people show up. Thursday, our staff is up to about 20, and then we can be anywhere from 30 to 40 staff. And most of those people that come in, like all of our range officials, with a handful of the Tommy, Pat, Bill, or Randy that come in early in the week, all those people come in just for the tournament. Um, they come in because they love it. They love coming in, helping, and they love seeing the shooters. That group of people is, I mean, they're special to me. They are truly family. The greatest part of any weekend for me is getting to hang out with that team because they put so much work into making it happen. But then you add the city staff on top of that, and we're usually between 50 and 60 workers, volunteers, and sometimes that number goes up if the city's providing parking help and they're providing people to pick up trash and go around and fill up water coolers. That's not counting the guy who comes in with the sewer truck to pump out the porta johns that are all over the facility. So there are a bunch of people, and then some of the venues we go in, we might not have quite that many people. If we're putting in a new range, a lot of the work is done ahead of time. Like Scott spent last year, he spent a couple weeks in Fort Mitchell or Fort Moore, getting Fort Moore new ranges put in there, cleaning up some old ranges, some trees fall down, brush hogging, getting it ready so that his staff could get the work done in a week. And when he did that, he always had some help, guys volunteer to go along and help. So it varies. London last year was a place we went in 2 weeks early because they built the 2 new ranges up there on the power line. But yeah, 40 to 60 is average when the competition's in full swing.
That's a lot of moving pieces.
A lot of people. And, I think one of the coolest things that I see is all the blood, sweat, tears that go into setting it up. And by 1 o'clock on Sunday, that crew has it gone. I mean, you walk through there, and other than porta johns and trash cans sitting there, you don't know anything happened. It's very impressive on Sundays to watch those guys work. And ladies, the ladies on the team too.
Scott's a great guy. A couple years ago, I had some health issues and had trouble getting around, and Scott was phenomenal about getting me a ride to the ranges. I see him do that all the time with people that just need that extra boost. Great guy, love him. But yeah, all your guys, your range officials. I mean, I've gone, I've hit all the tournaments the last 2 years myself. I'm friends with some of the range officials now. I walk up, I know them by name, and like, hey, how's your wife? You know their wife's name, and you're talking about their kids and stuff. And it used to just be like, oh, there's one of the range officials. One of the guys in the blue shirt, and it's turned into a real big family for me. And I'm not saying it's to kiss anybody's butt. I mean, because there's nothing perfect out there. But I appreciate the ASA tournaments. I appreciate the family atmosphere. I appreciate you do see so many families there. And like I said, are things perfect? No. But is it pretty darn good? Yes, it is. To have that many people and that many moving parts and to put together an event like that makes it where you can't wait to get back to the next one, that says a lot.
Yeah, people always come up to me at the Classic, and I have one story to go back and talk about family and range officials. But people always come up to me at the Classic, and they're like, "Are you glad it's over?" And I'm always like, "No." Is it a lot of work? Yeah, but it's what we do. And our staff do it because we love it. But I'm like, it's going to be 6 months till we do this again. And I love to hunt, enjoy the fall, but I want to be back and see everybody. I like hanging out on weekends and seeing that staff. But one story that I just love that came out of this year with the range officials and that family dynamic. Archers, there was a family that helped with Archer for a long time that helped us run the kids program. So on Saturday mornings, our junior Eagles and Eagles go out and shoot. Mm-hmm. We've got a future champion program. We've got a shoot with the pros. And so there's a lot of stuff happening for kids on Saturday morning. And when this family, because of work changes, said they couldn't attend events anymore, we're like, what are we going to do with these kids? Because they were awesome. I mean, they orchestrated. We feed the kids lunch, and usually have some kind of dessert before they go back out and shoot with the pros. And one of our range officials, and I love the guy, but I would have never guessed that he would turn into the person that he became. He volunteered to go out one day, and he's like, I'll go out and help with the kids. And it's Kenny Hatton, so it's Bill Hatton, who is been around forever. He's a range official on the open pro range, and it's his son. And Kenny said, "I'll help with the kids." And first time he came back, and I was like, "How was that?" He's like, "Yeah, not bad." And I mean, he fell in love. Those kids loved him. He's like, "I'll do it every time." In fact, he missed Metropolis this year because he was getting married. So their wedding was in Montana, and he wasn't going to make. He didn't want to tell his wife, like, "We're getting married and then going to an ASA." I think it was Metropolis they missed. Anyway, they missed one of them, and so the kids, the parents, they were upset. Where's Kenny? And they came back afterwards. They're like, "We need Kenny. We Kenny's the only one who can do our range, and he's just so good with the kids and the families. And it's so fun when you watch somebody like that who you would have never thought would take to it the way that he does. But yeah, it's and there's just stories across the board like that with the relationships that are made. But that to me kind of highlights what we're trying to do, and as far as provide a place for everyone to come and shoot.
Yep. I got some of my best friends in the country. I mean, literally all over the country come from ASA tournaments. Like I said, Joe,
Yeah,
that's usually on here with me, he lives in North Dakota. I'm in Missouri, and we met on the ASA range, shooting together. And it's just
yeah,
every time I go to another shoot, you always start talking to more people. And next thing you know, somebody saying, "Hey, give me your number so we can stay in touch with each other." I get text messages. I don't want to say every day, but definitely a couple times a week from people in different parts of the country that I've met at ASA tournaments.
yeah.
And I love it. I just absolutely love it. I can't wait. I got the old countdown going now. I can't wait to get back to Foley next year. Life goes by
Yeah.
fast, and I don't want to go any faster than it's already going. But man, I can't wait for Foley.
Well, one thing that'll change in 2025 for me, I'm going to shoot more team shoots. So I actually brought a bow. Never shot an ASA. Never shot competitive 3D ever. I mean, I grew up archery hunting. I can shoot a bow all right. I beat Tim Gillingham in a team shoot, so
Oh, hey, there you go.
have
That's
to
something to
throw
brag
have to
about.
throw that out there. But we no we I shot the team shoot in London this year just to go out. It was the most fun I've had. If you can, if you've been coming to pro-ams and you've not shot a team shoot, if you can any way possible get off work, come to that. I was on a target with Jimmy Lutz, and I won't remember the three amateurs, but they were awesome. There was a young girl. She was probably 14 or 15, and I looked at her a couple times and I just apologized. I'm like, "I'm so sorry. We're just a bunch of crazy people out here." And she laughed. She goes, "I love it." And her dad was standing behind her. She goes, "And I'm used to it. My whole family's crazy, so this is normal." But picking on Tim, Jimmy Lutz picked on me and then shot 9 out of 10 12, so I couldn't really do anything back to him. But my daughter and PJ were 2 targets down, and we were yelling back and forth. And the highlight of that wasn't so much beating Tim, because Tim will make sure when he tells that story. So that's nothing to measure it on. I shot terrible, so you shouldn't be proud of that. But the most fun was PJ was shooting that with my daughter, 2 targets down, and PJ had to hit a 10 or a 12 to beat me for the day. And so our target finished first. So our whole group walked down, and we had been kind of bantering back and forth. So the groups all around us knew what was going on. And so there were probably, I want to say there were close to 40 people standing behind PJ. It was a Wolverine, his last arrow, had to hit a 10 or 12 to beat me. And I got right in his ear and just started chirping. And he pulled up and he blanked the target. I mean, you just saw the dirt fly underneath it. He looked at his sight. He wanted an excuse so bad. Looked at his sight. Sight was set right, and but that those kind of things, those memories. That was just a small glimpse of me of what it is for shooters to come,
Yeah.
and the experiences that they have. I was so glad that I did that because it is a lot of fun. We want to protect that fun and the family dynamic, and yeah, just
Yeah.
we
I
want
was
all.
I, I was blessed this year. I got to shoot in the peer group in the senior pins for shooter of the year, and I went into it sitting in fourth spot, and nobody's positions changed. The guy was in first, finished in first, and so on
Yeah,
and so on. But it was so much fun to have guys. Even at our age, we are so freaking competitive, but yet you were rooting the other guy on and cheering for the other guy so much, but yet you're trying to beat him so bad. And
yeah,
it is the most friendly competition you can get into. I absolutely love. I've never done anything in my life. I've been in sports in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, as a college coach and everything for 15 years, and played other sports prior to that. And nowhere do you have that. I'm rooting for you, but I'm trying to beat you so bad at the same time. And that's,
Right.
I mean, I don't even get that at the state shoots. The state shoots is
Yeah.
got a different vibe to it than going to the big ASA tournaments do. And I just
Right.
absolutely love it. Love it. Your daughter's doing
Yeah.
pretty darn good too, isn't she?
She's doing all right. She had a decent year, a couple good shoots, a couple shoots. She would like some arrows back, but yeah, I mean, she's still loving it. And our very first tournament was, we're not sure. We should go back and actually look, because when I get asked, I'm like, it's either 2017 or 2018. I think it was 2018. And so our first shoot was Foley. She wanted to try a 3D, and never shot 3D before. We drove down. I left work on Wednesday. We drove down all night long so we could be there in time for the team shoot. And she was fortunate enough to get on a team shoot with Emily McCarthy, who
There you
she
go.
had met at an indoor shoot 2 years previous, and they had kind of kept in touch. And Jeff Hopkins. And I got to tell the story because it's Jeff, and the arrow is still downstairs. But they shot the team shoot, and Jeff center punched a 12, and he turned around, and those of you who know my daughter, she's 5 foot tall. Jeff is
Jeff
eight
is a
two. I don't know. He's
giant.
a big
Yeah.
guy. He is a giant guy. So he turns and he looks at her and he kind of chirped at her and picked on her a little bit. And she stepped up and just Robin Hooded his arrow, just destroyed the back end of his arrow, and turned and just smiled at him. And she, for a long time, carried that arrow in her bow case, but now it's downstairs. And so yeah, she started there, shot through high school, and then went to the unknown game for 1 year. Um, Enjoyed it, but she likes to know exactly, like, if that arrow doesn't hit behind the pin, she wants it to be her fault in her shot, not just her yardage judging. So
Yep.
she really struggled with that, and she loves kind of a lot of different disciplines, and so she's like, oh, I want to put the time into unknown. So she went to the K50 class because we had heard that the following year it was going to go to a pro, a women's known pro. Yeah, and she's enjoying that. The relationships, she still gets along great with Emily and Jeff, and some of those relationships from day one are still there, and
Yep.
it's a lot of fun.
And that's what's so cool. The amateurs that can show up in, like the first one I went to, I'm like, holy crap, it's Levi Morgan standing here,
Right.
And but you can actually rub elbows with the big dogs. And I've been to enough of the tournaments now over the last few years that um, you see some of these people and they actually like know your name. You say hi to them. Cara
Right.
Kelly, a great example. When I first met Cara Kelly, you get that. "Oh, I don't want to go talk to them. I don't want to bother these people. They're here, doing their thing, and I don't want to get in their business." And but you start talking like Cara Kelly, and she's just such a sweetheart. The last time I saw her down at Coleman, she's like, "Hey, Steve, how you doing?" Come over and talk to me, and it's like, this is so freaking cool. What other sport can you do this?
Right. Yeah, I mean, Levi is, they're all like that. You
Yeah,
got Levi
yeah.
and Dan on the
I just
pro
use that as an
side. And
example because I was starstruck the first time I went to an ASA tournament. I'm like, holy crap, this person really is
oh
here,
yeah,
and it's like, yeah, it's cool.
yeah. I mean, that first year, Hallie shot with Jeff and Emily, but then later we were at another tournament. We're standing there and we started talking to Levi and Chance, and at the time I didn't know who Chance Bobeth was. Didn't know that he's like the godfather of indoor archery, and the two of them together have done some pretty incredible things. And it was our first year there. I wasn't involved in cam. They had no idea who we were, but they were talking to Hallie and asking her about her arrow setup. And Levi was like, well, here's how I used to build arrows for Samantha. And Chance is like, well, here's what I do for Kelsey. And they both said before they walked off, like, any questions at all, just reach out to us.
Yeah.
We'll help in any way that we can. And those are just two examples of
Yeah, I mean,
7 years of
there's a couple hundred people we could talk about right now,
right.
that are like that. But that's just the
Yeah.
mentality of everybody. Everybody that goes these tournaments, whether you're amateur, your first tournament you've ever been to in your life, or you're one of the pros, man, everybody's just good people.
Right.
That's what makes it so much
And so
fun.
when you take that into consideration, you take into consideration the product we have, the people that are involved. To go back to your question, do you see this growing? Absolutely, because we've got to showcase what we have between the product and the people, and I think people are just going to fall in love, and it'll grow. And I think the future's bright for ASA and 3D archery.
Yeah, we got to give a big shout out to all the sponsors. My gosh, all the sponsors, what they throw back into the organizations and just helping
Yeah,
everybody out too is great.
yeah. I mean, from our host sponsors to the people that show up and set up exhibitors to the sponsors that maybe can't be as involved as they want, but we can call up at any time and hey, we could use this or we need this help. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many people involved in making this thing happen. I mean, we could spend the rest of the night
Yeah.
just thanking people by name that deserve it. But it's a very cool community, right? That I think as people discover and we get it out in front of more people, that community is just going to grow.
Yep. Well, Josh, I told you when we started, I'd only keep you occupied for about an hour, and we're about an hour and 15 minutes into this. So I do
We
appreciate
didn't
your
do too bad.
time. No, not bad, but I don't want to burn you out because I want to get you back on again in the future. So I don't want you to say,
Yeah,
I'm not going to talk to that guy
absolutely.
again because he goes too long. So,
When we have some of those decisions made and big announcements for the future, I'll definitely let you know. So you can get me back on, and I won't have to be so tight-lipped.
there you go. But anyway, yeah, Josh, thanks again. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait for Foley 2025 to see you and all the other people again and get back into the competition part of it. But in the meantime, I tell
Absolutely.
you what, my hunting game has sure ramped up because of shooting 3D. And
Oh yeah,
in the state of Missouri, our archery season starts next weekend, and there's gonna be some deer in trouble just because I picture 10 rings on the side of them now. I don't
that
look at the side of a
that's
deer
right.
anymore. I see a 10 ring or a 12 ring. So
Yeah. Well, best of luck this fall, and thanks so much for having me. And we look forward to catching up with you at the next shoot.
yeah, do you want to got any information for any of your social media for ASA or anything that you want to throw out there? Contact information. If anybody's got any other
Yeah,
questions.
people can
I don't think you
catch up
personally
with
like
us
social
on the
media, but
asaarchery.com. Also on the
okay.
app and on social media, we've got ASA Archery on Facebook as well as Instagram. And so we kind of, after that last season, take a little break from that stuff, but we were ramping up there with more content coming out on the socials. But for information, news, when the targets come out, hotels for where to stay, that's something if you're going to go to Foley and you don't know where to stay, check it out on the website or the app. And we've got a list of hotels that partner with the city there and make sure that they don't skyrocket the rates for you.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Josh. Well, thanks again, buddy. Appreciate you. I've enjoyed
All
this.
right. Well, thank you. And it was a lot of fun. We'll talk again, I'm sure, and I'll
Yeah.
see you at the next shoot.
All right. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.